Okay, do we want to go ahead and run the video? Welcome, everyone. And I must say that is a great MIT video that they did for the 16th annual MIT CDOIQ Symposium. So the team did a fantastic job on that. So welcome to track 1, the environment, social, and governance track for better data insights, enabling companies' ESG goals to ultimately benefit society. I'm your track producer, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you to this special session called Data Governance for the Modern Organization. I'd like to mention just a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded. Presentations will be included in the symposium proceedings that will be emailed and communicated out to everyone, and you'll be able to access them at no additional charge. The video recordings for public consumption, again, we want this to go worldwide. And so we've created a YouTube channel called CDOIQ, where we've posted the past 2 years of all the sessions from the MIT Symposium in that channel by year, and also some other videos as well. So if you haven't been at that channel and you want to see past speakers, please go ahead and visit the CDOIQ YouTube channel. So there will be a Q&A session at the end of this topic. And for our audience online, because we're normally getting about 150, 200 people online, as well as our audience here. So please put your questions for our virtual audience in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that. And for our speakers, please have your hand up, and we'll either get a mic to you, or you can go to the mic in the middle. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. So Shinji Kim is the founder and CEO of StarSelect, which has an automated data discovery platform that helps you understand your data. Previously, she was the CEO of Concord Systems, a streaming processing platform acquired by Akamai Technologies in 2016. She led building Akamai's new IoT data platform for real-time messaging, log processing, and edge computing. Prior to Concord, Shinji was the first product manager hired at Yieldmo, where she led the ad format lab, A/B testing, and yield optimization. Shinji studied software engineering at the University of Waterloo, a fellow Canadian that attended that university, thank you, and general manager at Stanford GSB. So welcome, Shinji.
Thank you, Robert, and thanks so much for coming to my session today. How many of you have started or are implementing a data governance project today that may be taking way longer than you anticipated? Okay, that's like half of the room already. I'm hoping that some of our learnings and experiences of working with fast-growing companies can contribute to some of the takeaways that you might be able to take away from my talk today. So to start off, a little bit about my background. I've been working as a data practitioner for the last 15 years, starting as a software engineer, worked as a data scientist, building sales forecasting models, as well as analysts and product managers, looking into a lot of data and making business decisions on data. Robert did a little bit of an intro of myself, but I started a company called Concord Systems in 2014, focused on real-time data processing. We worked with lots of financial services institutions as well as IoT data companies to help them process large volumes of data in real time. And after our company got acquired by Akamai, I started working very closely with large enterprises, global enterprises that run tens of millions or hundreds of millions of devices across the globe. And from that experience, it became very clear to me that companies are not stopping anytime soon around collecting more data more often. And cloud providers are really there to help them with that journey as well. Then what's the next frontier of issues? That really all came down to actually utilizing the data that you have. And this, in order to help that effort is why I started SelectStar. So just a little bit of the background of our company and what we do. We focus on automated data discovery, which we define as finding and understanding the data that you have access to. So today, SelectStar is a single source of truth of many data teams for them to be able to use a Google-like search to find information, understand the context of data, where it came from, who's using this, what are the other reports or data sets that came or built on top of this. They can add glossaries, documentation, and also collaborate with others. And last but not least, this is really all designed so that we can give governance control back to the data team as well. We currently work with companies that are Fortune 500, as well as very fast-growing companies that have recently IPO'd or are about to IPO soon. One thing that really is a common trait of a lot of our customers today is that in their own respective industries, they have a very data-heavy operations. For example, a company like Pitney Bowes that's been around the industry for more than 100 years, as one of the largest logistics companies, they do track every single shipment that goes from one place to another, and there's a lot of sensor data that flows into their systems, where their data teams in different domain levels will create their own models and dashboards on top. Whereas companies like Opendoor and VTS, respectively, they both are in the real estate industry, one for residential and the other one for commercial. Both companies have a lot of, utilize a lot of their own internal data, public data on the real estate market, as well as they buy a lot of external data in order to supercharge their machine learning models and pricing models that they run underneath. And these are just some of the examples that we've seen how data really plays a huge role in their day-to-day operations. And our mission is really to help them, help their data teams to be as productive as we can. So with that, I wanted to, basically from working with all these companies, there were some traits and commonalities that I have noticed from a lot of the customers. A lot of companies have adopted SelectStar mainly because they wanted a better modern data catalog. But what they found from SelectStar is a little bit more than that. They were able to find which are the right data sets to really focus on documentation or deprecate, or who should be the owners of which data sets, which really led them to starting or executing much faster on their data governance journey. So with that learnings, I have written a couple blog posts about this. And from there, I was invited to speak at a couple conferences, run roundtables and panels to discuss further about how data governance and how data discovery can really fuel data governance projects in today's organizations. So today, I would like to share some of these learnings on the talk today. And to step back a little bit, let's talk about kind of like the state of today's world. This is something that I've heard a lot when I was on this live show recently about how to do data governance better. Today, according to this Gartner report, most of the data governance projects are not managed well and eventually fail. I think everyone and all the companies do recognize that data governance is an important part of the company initiative, and it really is important to really enable business outcomes. At the same time, as you're executing the project, there are not many ways to really assess or monitor how the projects are going. And as a result, it's also really hard to prove the ROI or the quantitative gains that came out from data governance projects. So just kind of this is like where we are starting from, and there are some of the learnings that we've noticed that hopefully the state of data governance will be a little bit better on the next report, hopefully. So today, what I wanted to talk about is step back a little bit and to define what is data governance in a very simple term. I'll also a little bit talk about like what do we define as modern organization, as this is part of my title. And then I'll talk about why data governance is hard for modern organizations to get there, as well as the actual steps and the areas to implement a data management office and also automating your data governance workflows. So to start with the definition, what is data governance? Data governance, we can really talk about many different pillars of data governance, whether that is data availability, quality, access control, so on and so forth. But I believe the main goal of data governance is really ensuring the data to be your trustworthy asset of the company that does not get misused. And from there, really to put this simply, regardless of the pillar, the end goal that you're trying to achieve with data governance is putting your data, organization data, under control. And obviously that requires a bit of a management perspective. And this data management side, there can be the responsibilities of the CDO and the governance team, stewards, as well as different aspect of it. But like, how does this actually play a role in an organization? One part as a research that I found that it was very helpful for me to explain how data management offices operate within organization was this paper that talks about different data management office structure within organization. In high level, we can summarize data management offices as a centralized, decentralized, or a hybrid office in different companies. So I'll go dive into this a little bit one by one. First and foremost, centralized data management teams have a both combination of engineering and analytics team where they manage the data warehouse as well as models or different dashboards and reports that are basically handled by one large centralized team. So any request really goes to the same channel. Somebody can create a Jira ticket, and then that goes into always like the same team. So in this way, each business team or business quote-unquote data owners, they really delegate that responsibility of data management. They can request for the source and how this should be treated, and the data management, centralized data management team will execute it as it please. This definitely makes a lot of things to be more under control. At the same time, one of the issues that happen a lot is that things just take too long, or there can be a political issue between the business team and the data management office. But this is how a lot of small companies start with, and this organization just grows as the company gets bigger. On the other hand, what we see a lot in enterprises is more of a decentralized data management function. In this case, each business teams own their, basically they are responsible for their own data sourcing, their own models and different reports that they build on top. And there can be a IT function that is centralized that manages all the data warehouse that can be supportive of these businesses. But it's really up to the business domains in order for them to decide how they are going to manage the data. This really allows a flexible ways of making business decisions and also being able to utilize your data faster. But this is a part where you may feel like this is going out of control because like I believe active users should be defined this way, whereas product team thinks that the active users should be defined that way. You may find different reports popping out using the same term, but has different numbers. And then there's a hybrid model, where I would say a lot of organizations are also starting to move to. So here, the management responsibilities of data is shared between the more of a center of excellence, more of a centralized organization. And they work with different business data owners in order to basically disseminate the best practices of managing data models, as well as trying to centralize or have a good source of truth around maintaining their KPI definitions. And this, I would say, is a bit more complicated, can be complicated to divide the responsibilities, but when it works well, it can really have the best of both worlds for growing companies as your organizations continuously change. So to step back a little bit, how now do we define modern organizations? I would say a lot of the companies today are going towards more of this modern organization structure because there are many hybrid roles that are stemming out for individuals, as well as there are a lot of cross-functional projects that are being executed in a lot of organizations today. And this is a bit of a contrast compared to the traditional organization where it was very much top-down versus today's organization is very much focused on customer-focused and also project-driven that is really around executing the best of the breed project as much as possible. And what this means also is the operational perspective. The decisions get made much faster. There is a lot of automation that's built in. There's a lot of not just utilizing the manual way of tracking things on spreadsheets or docs. There are also different SaaS platforms that you may utilize in order to move faster. So a lot more dynamic work environment and careers that are being built as there is more of a modern approach on the organization building. And what I can say about modern organization is that changes happen more quickly, and hence data governance by default is not easy. There are a few trends that are also affecting modern organizations that we see that's affecting data teams today. First and foremost, decentralization of data ownership. So even for mid-sized companies, we are starting to see a lot more of dedicated analyst functions for each different divisions. They may not be, sorry, all right. They may not be called a data engineering team, but they are biz ops or people ops or product analytics group, which are a set of analysts that are designed to support the domain business needs and their business stakeholders, and they manage their own data models and dashboards and reports that's required for business decision making. On top of this, your business stakeholders are not just waiting for email reports to be delivered every week or every day anymore. A lot more individuals of organizations have direct access to data today through BI tools like Tableau, Looker, and Power BI, where they can slice and dice the data themselves and will start asking questions like, how did this data, or why does this number look like this? How did we calculate this metric? So on and so forth. And last but not least, convergence of data roles is another part that we are starting to see. We have this new role called analytics engineer that is a hybrid version of data analyst and data engineer, where you can, as a data analyst, you're not waiting for an engineer to build your ETL jobs anymore. You can actually put a SQL statement to create a recurring job to fuel your dashboards yourself. We also have a lot of very similar or overlapping roles between data analysts and data scientists in terms of building models versus dashboards. And last but not least, we do have a lot of business ops analysts that are focused on domain level analysis versus where data analysts may be more focused on modeling and data. So with all of this, it's getting more confusing. And so how should we try to do data governance for today's organizations? And as many answers go, the answer is it depends of the size of the company. But for every successful data management and governance projects that I've observed, they have all been following the approaches of the hybrid data management office, what we can also call as a hub and spoke model. So a few things. In order to keep up with the pace of change in the data that's happening across different organizations, it's really important to give the ability and control to different business domain owners to be able to source and manage the data. At the same time, you do want to define the main higher pillar of best practices and frameworks that they can follow during the management process. And hopefully this will give more of the flexibility and control together. In order to achieve a hybrid model, what we see a lot is if you are, the organization may be coming from either centralized or decentralized model. If you're coming from a decentralized model, one of the ways to start this is by creating a centralized team so that they can become the hub to coordinate the multiple spokes. I believe that this is one of the initiatives that a lot of companies are starting to put into place today. If you're coming from a centralized model, a way to start this is by segmenting out which specific business domains may need the more of a help around best practices of managing their data models and really support them so that they can have their own ownership and delegation so that they can manage a lot of the models as well as how the data is being used within their business. So in order to get to this hybrid model, I also do have a few next steps here, how to implement a hybrid data management office. So first and foremost, I think having a data governance project overall is always a strategic initiative that your company takes. Data is being used everywhere in your company, and without having a full support of the management, this is very likely to fail because every single other business and divisions have their own goals that they need to achieve anyway. So just having a team that's tasked to do data management doesn't really work. It needs to be treated as a company-wide initiative with the C-level support. Having a management office that is dedicated to execute the strategy is important, which includes having the dedicated data architecture and the program management support in order to actually pull out the project. On top of this, the reason why we need the executive support is because the centralized management team needs to collaborate with other domain functions in order to fully execute the strategy. And hence, the C-suite to really communicate that importance and also be aware of the progress, I would say, is one part that I see as one of the main ingredients that needs to have in order to build a hybrid data management office. Secondly, what we've noticed from a lot of the failed data governance projects in the past is primarily because it just goes out of scope. Once you start putting an enterprise data catalog and tries to put business glossary and tries to add data stewards, building your taxonomy, everything from top to bottom, it can go really hairy and you may fall into many different rabbit holes. So what we see as a really important part, just like any company-wide initiative, any large-scale project, is to really define like what your phases would look like, and for you to be able to achieve your quick win by actually defining why in our organization you need data governance today. And it can be all of the above, but the questions that you would want to answer are like why do we need to do this today? So what does that mean? Like, are we trying to build a single source of metrics today because we have executive dashboards that are out of date, or people are not trusting data anymore? Are we trying to get through the reporting requirements of GDPR because we are highly likely get to audited or we will get audited? Are we trying to make our data teams more productive because we are seeing some attrition issues, or because like we are always behind on our projects? Or are we trying to really bring self-service to more business teams because we are seeing a lot of similar requests that may not get dealt with right away? And I would say like your answer will probably be, I do want to have all of the above. But actually focusing on one, your core end state that you want to achieve in your phase one will really help you to make any trade-offs that you might need to make in your first 6 months of your project. And last but not least, having tools and workflows that defines the whole change management around data governance will be also very important, instead of tracking everything manually on spreadsheets and emails going forward. I would say regarding the tool choice, one thing that I feel like is very overlooked by a lot of decision makers is the usability of the tool. For your hybrid data management teams, so like your governance teams can be definitely well-trained on a data management platform, but have you actually tested those tools also against with your data or your business domain data teams? If the tool is not being used, then what is the point of having the tool? This is one of the areas that I feel like hence being overlooked, and hence becomes data management teams to be a little more centralized than enabling the decentralization. So one of the parts that I see as a really important part as the usability of the tool and also the support of the tool. Obviously, anyone that is looking at a new tool, it's still a bit of a change. And we all know that nobody likes changes. So having the formal onboarding, training, and support for everyone, I would say is the important part. And with that, really defining what the change management flow, the workflow should look like. And once you have that process flow, then you can spot the areas of where it can be more automated. So to talk a little bit more about automation, that's kind of like my next phase of the talk. Okay, so with that, a lot of the things that I've just talked about is the thought around how to build and manage a good hybrid data management office. And in order to automate data governance workflows, what are some of the steps that you can take? So first and foremost, we believe now that it's not just about having everything cataloged or having the best plan for your data governance. One of the ways to start the plan and one of the ways to really inform the best plan is for you to actually understand how the data is consumed today in your organization. What this really helps you, I would say, is really around identifying and prioritizing and archiving the data set. So first and foremost, how can we identify which data sets that are important to be classified, documented, and having owners first? This may come from three different things you can also look into. What we call popularity, top users, and dependencies. In order to identify the most important data sets that you might want to look into, you would want to look into how the data sets are being used. What are the data sets that are being used by multiple businesses? What are the data sets that are being used by only one or two users? When you look at the top users, you can also look at who is actually using this data and who are the downstream end consumers of this data. So it can be the data set, but your downstream users may be the dashboard users. And is that dashboard user a C-level executive, or is it someone from the IT team? And the last but not least, there is the dependencies part. You may find data sets that are basically an upstream data set of many different data sets when you look into lineage. So can you find all the data sets that has dependencies in order for you to ensure the quality of that workflow, quality of that pipeline is being met and is being communicated correctly? So this exercise of being able to look into and get the introspection of your data lake or data warehouse is something that we recommend all of our customers to do. Once you have this data, then you can start prioritizing which are the ones that you want to monitor for quality and how you might want to document. And on the other hand, also archive the data sets that you may actually not need. And more often than not, what we see from a lot of customers is that they are using less than 10% of the data that they are supposed to manage. And given the structure of the data, because you may find out this is either part of the lineage chain or these are just the duplicated data, this is really where you can declutter and also may save a lot of cost on your data cloud. In another way, we call this as more of a Marie Kondo exercise for the data team. Secondly, once you have a bit of a, you got a lot of the deprioritized data sets out, and you know which are kind of the main data sets that you want to manage, what we recommend is building a good high-level frameworks around organizing your data. And this is really I would say, a prerequisite for both making sure that you have a good center of excellence, as well as delegating the control of your spokes, of our different business data teams to follow as they are starting to add their ways of governance. And there are three important structures that we consider to be defined: tags, ownership, and documentation standards. So first and foremost, regarding tags, we generally see two different types of tags. First and foremost, it could be a category tags or domain tags. So this can also be your business line or product lines, or it can be different categories or domains of your business. So like a sales, marketing, or operations, or can be the actual product line names. And within that business domain, the data team can add the sub-tags underneath to define more granular ways of how they organize their data. On the other hand, there's also the status type of tags, whether this is marked as analyst approved, this is to be deprecated. It could be also what is staging, bronze, silver, and gold tables. So a lot of these can also be defined programmatically. So ensuring that there is some status attached to different data sets and or columns as well is an important part of structure that we see on your framework side. And ownership. So who owns the data? We see owners being defined not just as a single person, but usually as a team. We also see ownership defined not just as a one data steward, but it will be a business owner, technical owner, sometimes also a legal owner. And defining these ownerships also can be start from more higher level and down to individual level, where you can start with division or a team level. And within those, you can also find who may be the most queried user of that data set in order to assign somebody as an owner. So having an ownership or somebody being assigned as an owner means that they will get notified any changes that's happening on your data, and they will be the main person that can approve or disapprove of any requested documentation or access as well. And last but not least, having a documentation standards, or what we would call also documentation templates, is also important. You can have a high-level business glossary or core concepts and metrics defined. But if everyone defines their metrics in different way, then it will be also no use. So defining the actual structure of documentation, for example, if you're defining a business metric, for it to state how do we calculate this metric? What are the business problems that this metric solves? And where in the data model is this represented in are some of the questions that we recommend having our customers to have in their template. And then last but not least, having data dictionary can really become the raw table and column level documentation that technical owners can refer to. And once you have the tags, ownership, and documentation starting to get filled in, I would say that's really when you can start adding some of the automation workflows. It's really hard to just put automation in without having any of this groundwork to be done. But as you start getting more of the business domain level data analysts and data teams being involved, they can start putting in their contribution to the data catalog or the data single source of truth platform that you have set in place. Few things that we recommend our customers to implement hence include what we call a modern data catalog solution. This is not just to centrally inventorize and put metadata in. A lot of modern data catalogs today, like SelectStar, they provide you with an active metadata, or what we would call as more of a derived or metadata analysis on top of your physical metadata that shows when's the last time this data was updated, who are the top users of this data sets, and what are the changes that may happen on the metadata itself. So your catalog itself will also evolve and provide you with more insights instead of a more of a static database that updates whenever you click a button. With this, as things may get changed and things may get picked up by the catalog, or as you start at least having owners, having a notification system apart from the catalog or even built into the catalog around alerting is also important. You've now had a lot of the domain owners to start contributing to the catalog itself, but like, what are we gonna do about the new changes that's coming up? Because your data model changes constantly. So having notification and alert support, I would say, is a minimum that you want to have in order to start automating the change management workflows. And last but not least, having more of a workflows to also propagate changes or actually making a bulk updates to your single source of truth is also important. It's almost impossible, even if you have a tool, it's almost impossible to track the changes that you're making. But with a lot of the modern approaches, especially today, there are a lot of solutions around data lineage that you can get that gives you the end-to-end data flow of how it goes. And if you have a good understanding of, let's say, which data is also replicated as is, or if there was any specific transformation that has happened, utilizing those attributes, you can automatically propagate documentation, tags, as well as ownership. So with that automation, the best part about it is not just that you saved hours of work updating things manually. It's the fact that you know that the data is up to date because it was propagated and is correct. And I think those are the areas of why you would want to consider the automation. So yeah, I mean, with all this, what I would also want to say is data management requires a lot of discipline. And these are just some of the 3 main areas that I consider as more of a foundational point of building a hybrid data management office and also automating your data governance workflows. And really the center of it that we see and where a lot of our customers start from is having a data discovery so that you really understand and have a visibility of how your data is being consumed today. Like for you to be able to go to any platform to understand where did this data set come from, who is using this inside the company, and what are the reports or dashboards that are built on top of this? How are current downstream users utilizing this data? And operational metadata, like when was this last updated, and how often does this get updated, things like that. So I hope this gives you some ideas of what you might want to look into in your data warehouse and your data infrastructure. And I am happy to take any questions now.
Shinji, first of all, thank you very much indeed. I can tell you that this room is pretty full for the sessions we've got, but you've got 400, almost 392 people viewing online, watching. So we have got some questions coming through, but do people here have questions that, and maybe we'll alternate between for the next 5, well, we've got 15 minutes, so I think we've got plenty of time. So there seems to be a lot of interest in this. Do we have any hands up in the audience, first of all, from our team here? So if you're nervous about it, don't be nervous about it. While I'm waiting, while you think of that, let me read you the first question from the online team. So it says organizations require more autonomy to use quality, timely, reliable, and secure information. The governance model to choose should be defined based on the organization culture and capability to execute. What has been your experience in large companies?
So our experience of working with large companies on data management side, I would say really came from partnering with the centralized data management team. And they do operate as a more of a hybrid model, but for them to have the more of an opinionated approach of how to define the high-level frameworks and providing the support and onboarding for different domain-level data teams to start utilizing the tool, follow the same tag procedure or ownership, and also providing with a minimal program management support, I would say has been really the best practice that we've seen from our experience so far.
Excellent. And I believe SelectStar is also a value-add partner to the Symposium. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
we are.
do you actually have a tabletop or booth, or is there people here that we can?
Yeah, so we do have a booth just right outside. We can also give you a live demo. We have a couple of our team members that are there all day today and tomorrow.
Just in case there's any shy people in the audience, I do have more questions coming in from the online. As I say, we've got 900 people online, and you've got half of them in this session. So it's amazing. So the next question is, data governance can be perceived as an inhibitor rather than an enabler to an organization. How do you see data governance enabling organizations and adding value through data and achieve their innovation objectives?
So can you say the last part of the
Sure.
question?
How do you see data governance enabling organizations add value through data and achieve their innovation objectives?
Integration objectives. My maybe like to rephrase the question, maybe this is around how does data governance help achieving organization objectives like meeting regulation compliance or being maybe the ESG type of initiative. I would say that really kind of like depends on the initiative. At the same time, the core of data governance comes from having a well-organized or well-managed data, like the way that we define data governance earlier, as I said, is having the organization data under control so that it is a trusted asset of the company that doesn't get misused. And that, I think, is really more of a foundation that can be leveraged to many different initiatives.
Excellent. And so we've got two mics, so if there's anyone who wants to come out, I'll keep an eye out on that, but I will ask the next question. So data governance is synonymous with data management. What would be the top 5 focus areas?
So I think the top 5 focus area really comes down of data management or data governance comes down to the main goals that you're trying to achieve. So there can be like making sure the access control is in place. It can be making sure that the data quality is in place, making sure you are defining all the sensitive data and also the way to access that data. And all of those components are important, but I would say it would really have to come down what the priority of the objective of data governance is, which I believe is important to define in the beginning in order to achieve all the goals of having well-governed, well-managed data.
Excellent. So another question, what is modern, what is old-fashioned data governance? A different mindset, technology? So when you talk about that, I think they're asking the question, what do you define as modern versus traditional?
So my title of the talk was called Data Governance for Modern Organization. And so it's not necessary. So how do we map the way that we do data governance with all the changes that's happening in organizations? So a lot of this is really around what I mentioned earlier in the slides, which is, it could be, I think traditionally, I think it's primarily either you have a centralized or a very decentralized way of managing data. And the way that we need to move towards, I guess it's not, I won't be able to actually go through this with this clicker as well. So I'll just move it back to the slides. But the way that we recommend is having a more of a hybrid approach that can be flexible of each business domain needs, but also having a center of excellence that can drive more high-level frameworks of data management overall.
Excellent. Another question that came in is, how do you extend data management? I'm not sure whether they meant data governance, but how do you extend data management to end-user developed applications such as Access, Excel, Power Apps?
How do we do data management on top
how do you
of
extend? How do you
access
to these desktop applications such as Excel, Power Apps, Access, and things like that?
So to me, when it goes into applications and applications of files that is not stored in servers and it can be stored in different local machines, that kind of becomes more of, I would say, knowledge management than just data management. And it can be part of it, but it's actually not the scope of my talk or expertise today.
Excellent. So another question came up, and again, just looking around. So the question is, could you clarify the meaning behind each business domain should own their data domain model?
Sure. So what I mean by each business domain and the domain data model is that, as an example, there can be a business domain of sales or product. And within those domains, the types of report that they consume and the main KPIs that makes them to make decisions within are different. Hence, the metrics that you collect and track are also different. And hence, it's important for them to be able to have the freedom to define them within their own domain. And hence, the data model is slightly different. And that's not something that a centralized data team generally don't have the capacity to and really do not need to really go beyond their data expertise to control the business domain models. Does that make sense?
Excellent. So another question come up.
I'm cheating. I'm cutting.
Yeah.
You wait.
No, I didn't see your hand, but that's okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, quick question about the hybrid model. Like, how do you see the most successful hubs formed? Like, what type of team members, what roles are on those teams where it's been most successful in your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. The roles that we see as a most successful hybrid team, especially on the data management office, is really a full stack team. So data architecture, maybe a little bit of engineering, because like they may need to give them the examples of how to implement the best data models, as well as the analytics that has a good amount of understanding of high-level domain levels, because they would also have to define the high-level tax systems, as well as program management. So a few things that we see that a lot of data teams do really well is they really try to bring the focus of all different domain data teams into one place whenever they are doing either data all hands across multiple divisions. And from there, they talk about the initiatives. A few things that will trigger that more domain level teams to be excited about is to talk about maybe doing like a data trivia. Did you know about this about our company data. Because a lot of data practitioners may be very pigeonholed in their own data models, but the job of the data management office is to also bring out the best case scenarios of how other domains are really utilizing data differently. And then having more of the continuous training and office hours for different domain levels to really catch up to the level as they need to.
Any other questions, just in case I missed any? Yeah, the question up there. You can come out to the mic.
Hi, in one of your slides you said that the end-to-end data maintenance should be governed by the data management office in a hybrid model. Why do you think this is a good idea?
I don't think I said that end-to-end should be governed. Whatever tool that you end up adopting should have the visibility end-to-end from sources to wherever the data really lands on. But the management of different parts of the pipeline and the model can be owned and managed by different part of the organization.
But data production would be still governed by the data owners, right? In the business
Yes,
department.
and that data producers will sit in your product teams or engineering teams, and the other models that are built on top of can be owned by the domain level teams. And then the actual models and the reports should really be governed by the business level team, whereas data management office is really there to support and share best practices between the domain level teams is what we believe.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So we still have another question if you're Shinji. Is there another hand there? I will come back to the virtual audience and probably make this maybe the last question. So traditional data governance, governing all the data assets and big bang approach versus smart data governance, start governing data assets that truly creates value to the business first, an incremental approach to building capability. What is your view?
Oh, I think it actually summarized my talk very well of my view of the latter. Is the question more for me to explain further?
Which is your view? Which would you prefer, the big bang approach or the smart, start small, scale
Especially when
fast?
you put it that way, right? I think for different sizes of the organization, it can definitely be centralized, top-down, and really managed by one team. But what we see in a lot of fast-growing organizations and also larger enterprises, decentralized approach is inevitable. It is really the delegation and the divide of the roles between the data management office and the domain level team, because once you start introducing the centralized team, people would feel like, well, then what about everything that I've been doing so far? How does that actually map to the new governance initiative that you're trying to do? And I think this is really where we are starting to see more of the collaboration coming from the centralized team, being able to provide a lot of the insights and the high-level frameworks that other domain owners can really follow and foster more of a cross-team collaboration. And I would love to see more examples going forward. I think this is still fairly new, but is when it works well, can be really productive in a lot of organizations.
Excellent. Shinji, Kim, thank you very much indeed from Select Star. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So you can go ahead and bump out the video. Thank you indeed for attending this session. I believe we're now at a break for 30 minutes to your next session. Good luck. Thank you.